with normally it's Syria. She's quite a good hero for two reasons. Her spell schools are quite strong. Water spell school is actually really decent with Necropolis overall, and Darkness of course actually comes with all of these Necropolis heroes, but it's decent overall. So I'll talk about the spells there. I'll talk about how you should play Syria, in my opinion, and try to give you guys as much advice as possible to get you started in the game. So let's start with Necropolis creatures. The first thing you want to go for is actually try to get as much goals as possible. I'm not sure if you start with 3 goals or 2 or 4. I don't think you're going to start with 4, but if you can get the 4 one, it's really going to help you start the tempo in the game. It's definitely a good card. The 2/1/2 for 1 cost is really decent. It works just fine. And moving on, this Lich is actually pretty good. The 2 damage and 4 HP is actually pretty hard to kill. Whenever you reach 5 HP, it's harder to kill because there's a lot of spells that actually do 4 damage. So try to get close that 5. And anything that above 3 survive to Insects 1, which is a wipe kind of spell that costs 3, which is super strong. So you want to try to aim for something a bit more than 3 HP if possible. These cards are pretty good. They don't cut a lot, and the 2 damage immune to retaliation magic shooter is also pretty staple in most decks out there with Necropolis. So I would definitely try to recommend to at least get 3 or 4 of these to get you started. These guys, they're not being played that much. Yeah, they're being played. The crippling is so annoying that the opponent isn't going to put any creatures in front. He's going to try to remove it in another way, so that means that you'll be able to do 2-4 damage, maybe a bit more, as the game goes furthermore, we'll say. And yeah, so basically you can do a few damage and make it happen, and it's quite a value card. It's same requirement except for the 1 magic here, but almost the same requirement as the Lich, and it's a different option if I want to go for more melee creatures. This Eggman tree is being used mostly for control decks in Necropolis, less aggressive, less mid-range kind of aggressive decks, but it is super strong. It cannot attack, of course. I mean, you see the 0 damage, you're like, oh, it's gonna suck, fine, for sure. One ventilation is pretty decent, and it has a 5 HP, as I said before. It survives to most of the spells out there, and the regenerate is quite strong. So sometimes what's gonna happen is that your opponent's gonna put, let's say, a 2/1/2, like a Golem that we just saw before, and then they'll put the inventory, and it's gonna take him forever to kill it. And when he's about to kill it, well, just move it away. It's gonna regenerate anyway, so this card definitely awesome in control decks. When I go for like more defensive, try it out. It's definitely worth it. And these actually works with other kind of specific decks. I'm just gonna skip them for now. When I go for value cards, I actually like give you at least 1 or maybe 2 cards for 1 card here. The Lamassu is actually pretty decent blocker, as not only it's a flyer, so you can put them anywhere in Battleground, but also you have the 2 retaliation and 6 HP for 3 costs. One of the most defensive card out there for the resources costs. So definitely worth it if you want to go more defensive. It's awesome, really good card. However, if you want a card that survives more than Lamassu, of course it doesn't have the 2 retaliation, but the life drain 2 is actually super awesome. Sometimes the opponent is going to put big spells that's going to do damage to the whole battleground, but if you have life drain, he's going to keep getting his HP back, and it's quite a pain, seriously, to get those creatures to die. So try them out. Vampire Knights are really awesome. Well, actually, when I play Necropolis, I try to incorporate them as much as possible. Good card, definitely. Not a fan of that one, as it doesn't have 5 HP, and it doesn't find like for the same cost you have this possibility, and the Vampire Knight is just that much better. Moving on, the Plague Zombie is interesting if you want to go for infect kind of a deck out there. There's a few heroes that utilize infect as well as an ability to destroy creatures. Let's not go that far, but it is good because the infect ability actually helps you kill creature, and he's quite the blocker as well. It's quite a defensive kind of a creature there. I like it. The 1 retaliation can be a good option compared to the 0 retaliation of the Vampire Knight, so depending on where you're at, it's definitely worth it. Moving on, you have the Untamed Rats, and what's pretty nice about the rats there is that just like the little banshees, the little lingering ghosts, is that you have incorporeal, so everything that is not magic source is going to be off down. So these guys can be awesome blockers, they can be awesome attackers depending on what you're facing, and it's definitely worth it to try them because that keyword is quite strong indeed. Moving on, the best 4 cards. I'm just going for like best cards, the one that are most used actually. This is what I'm going in for. Archlich is probably one of the best 4-drops ever because not only does it have decent stats over 5 HP, as I said earlier, it even has 3 damage and it has life drain too. This card is a shooter, so that means that it's pretty hard to get to him. But now that it even has life drain, I mean, his survivability just goes higher and higher. It's really hard to kill as a creature, and he has 3 damage. I mean, this guy had 2 damage, so, and it's a shooter, so you can decide between the front row and the back row. This card definitely one of the best 4-drops out there. If you have some, try to put them in your deck. It's gonna help you for sure. Moving on, the best 4-drop in my opinion is called the Decay Spitter. This card is almost always at least a 2-for-1. When it enters the battleground, another creature gets 2 poison counters. And of course the poison counter is like infect, it's the same basically. It's gonna take 2 damage the turn is of the opponent, so basically anything that has 2 HP left dies instantly. And any big creatures that you really want to kill is gonna die in 2 turns most of the time. And of course 5 HP and infect 1 again, so it's like it can stack those effects. Interesting. 2 damage, I know it doesn't have 3, but that ability is quite nice because in Necropolis you can recycle your own creatures, and you can recycle that ability when it arrives, and it is quite strong. Trust me, give it a try. You won't regret it. Moving on, Necropolis is probably one of the staples cards you need in Necropolis. I would definitely recommend it in any kind of deck. It has just so much value. Not only does it have 3 damage, it has 2 retaliation, 7 HP, so hard to kill. And the ability is mostly why it's being played with, I mean, in most of the decks, in Necropolis decks. But the overall stats of the creature is also like a bonus, it's just that good. Like life drain and all the stats and stuff. But whenever Necropolis, Wave of the Dead, enters the battleground, take 2 target creature cards from your graveyard and put them in your hand. This card has so much value. You pick up the cards, the creatures that just died or whatsoever, the creatures you really need, like other spitters that just died. Recycle them, play them, and yeah, this guy is super strong. Try to get him as soon as possible. I believe 8 wild cards is the cost for him, so as I said, once you get to the Forgotten Warriors box, you'll have 37. If you're playing Necropolis, you want this guy as soon as possible. It is so much worth it. Moving on, there's the other unique from Necropolis. He's not that strong, but he has a decent ability. He's not that strong because he's a melee. First of all, okay, he has 3 retaliation. That is not so bad. In fact, 2. It has 2 hit though. He costs a lot overall. It's probably the weakest unique out there, in my opinion. But his ability is that whenever he enters the battleground or attacks, it gives infect 1 to any kind of creature. So sometimes you need the extra damage to kill something. Then you play this guy. And he has 7 HP, pretty hard to kill as well, so it can be worth it. It's not the best unique. You really want to go for Tropos, recycle those spitters, recycle the cards you need, defend the battleground, and move on. Furthermore, forget about this card. This card is almost unkillable. If you want to play more defensive control, you would definitely like the Soul Consuming Lich, as anytime a creature dies, it deals 2 damage. And trust me, in this game, creature dies all the time. You play it, it's almost never gonna die. Seriously, this card is awesome. If you want to go for defensive, because it has only 2 damage. Moving on, you have water and you have darkness, so let's go for that here. Starting with water, there's a few options you can start with. I'm just gonna talk about the most played options, okay? The ones that I believe are the strongest for the cost. So, starting with water, I believe Ice Shell is quite strong. It only costs 1, and the ability is that Anchored is it has this value. Okay, if you have Anchored, you can't move from your position. However, there's a few cards that actually like bounces the creatures you have on the battlefield. So if you use Anchored, if you use Ice Shell, they're not gonna come back in your hand. They're just gonna stick there, and normally it's quite good anyway. Feel free to use it and try it out for yourself. But the main thing is that it prevents all damage dealt to initiated creature. and there's a lot of wipe spells out there. So if you want one of the creatures to survive, let's say Necropolis or Lich to survive, put that on. Normally, it's gonna survive quite easily, and it's definitely worth it. For one resources spell, it is quite good. I play at least 2 in most of my water schools there. If you wanna play for more defensive kind of approach there, weakness definitely worth it. -2/-2 can be quite awesome against most creatures. Some of them you can just disable them because they don't have enough hit any attack after that. It only costs 2. It's definitely worth it. Try to hit for sure. Moving on, if you have the chance to hit Moonstone at some point, it's quite good. Fire and Earth, you don't use them, therefore everything that, I mean, if your opponent has either fire or earth spells, you're gonna see some big wipes happening. But if you have Moonstone, your guy's gonna stick alive, trust me. Half damage rounding it down is quite a powerful ability. Even though people don't play it that much, it is super strong. Moving on, the other cards you want to go for value with are either Ice Spikes, which is 2 damage to all creatures off target line. I say that it's good because there's that card called Dark Assassin, which has 4 damage, 0 retaliation, and 2 HP, and it just destroyed them. And sometimes, I mean, you saw the goal, right? You probably saw other like 2 HP kind of creatures. The beginning of every faction, I believe, have 2 or 3 HP. So therefore, this ability can be quite strong if played right. So maybe if you have a few, try them out, can be useful. A lot of control decks actually use that Ice Spike. It's normally a 2-for-1, trust me. Moving on, you want to get as much geysers as possible if you're playing Syria. The 3 damage to target creature and all the adjacent creature is going to give you the little boost you need to actually finish up those creatures as soon as possible. So yeah, try to hit those geysers, and then you'll see your deck is going to be that much better in a short time. I believe the Necropolis comes with Death Seal, however, it is okay. It is not super strong for the only reason that, okay, you destroy a creature, fine, but you have to deal combat damage to it. So let's say you have a creature that does, let's say, 4 damage, and you have to kill a creature that has 7 HP whatsoever. Well, by attacking it, you reduce your overall damage potential by 4. Of course it does, that's obvious, but that's the point, you don't get as much damage through. So if you want to go for card advantage wise, what you want to go for, and for damage, it is called Soul Reaver. Simple, destroy target creature, it works against big creatures deck. You'll see some of these unique creatures that have awesome effects. Soul Reaver, it's done for cost, it's make it happen pretty easy. But yeah, if you play Syria, try to aim, if possible, for 4 might. I feel like 4 might is quite. I mean, for magic is quite. I would say that. Like you want to reach 4 might because you have all those good spells that you can use at the beginning. Even in the end game, a lot of people actually go for 4 magic here. So let's start. So Soul River, awesome. If you can get hands on to it, please play them. It's gonna see your game's gonna be that much better. Shadow Images is almost always a 2-for-1. It deploys a copy of target enemy creature. When any damage is dealt to the copy, destroy it. Fine. Okay, it has bad stuff because this is so strong. It doesn't seem to be that strong, but it is quite strong. And it gives quick attack. So let's say in the best, let's say you have Shadow Image in your hand, and the opponent plays a 6/4/4 creature. You use Shadow Image on that creature, you have it, it's a 6 damage potential, it has quick attack, therefore you can kill it, and then you have that Shadow Image that can be used as a 6 damage potential next turn. It is super strong, and it even works on enemy unique creatures. So like I played it 1 game at once, and this guy played 2 Shadow Image on one of my unique creatures, and he had 2 of them in the field. Yeah. If you can, play them, it's awesome. Also, Ice Weapon, as I said before, with the Holy Bless, the +2 damage permanent is actually quite a surprise. So, people normally, they calculate, so let's say you have 2 damage potential, it's gonna put 3 HP creature or more, just to make sure that it's not gonna die and can move it away afterward. But this is never gonna see it happen. People don't see Ice Weapon or Bless being played that much, and it's quite a surprise card. I really love it. Tried a few, and it works quite fine. Moving on. This spell we want to go for, if you go for water, it's called Strength of the Sea. Every creature again plus 1 damage. And Fortune Ward. Fortune Ward